Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my live streams. This live stream is a follow-up to the video that was released earlier today, in which I did a review of the new case from CBCS. And I got the case yesterday afternoon, late day, and immediately, well, after a few hours, honestly, I then went to the comic book room after the kids were in bed and proceeded to unbox the case that had arrived and record the video and then edit the video and then upload the video for you guys to be able to watch today during a premiere. So it was a busy night for me. I normally do not record on Sunday because I am all about the Ready, Set, Go preview show. But because the case arrived, I wanted to get this video done and I wanted to get it out. And so we did that. We released it at 3:30. Which is the time at which we release all videos Monday through Thursday. The video, I do believe, has been pretty well received. I mean, let me click on this thing. I think that we are basically over 1,000 views on the video already. And the video just came out a short while ago. And so I think that there is definitely some excitement and some curiosity as it relates to this new case from CBCS. And I want to give those guys again a shout out for giving the comic book community an opportunity to experience this case before we had to buy it, right? Before we had to buy it to experience it, they were like, hey, you want to check out this case and share it with your audience. And that is exactly what I did. And I think people actually appreciated their approach. And I think people appreciate the format, if you will, of the video that was released a short while ago. So this is essentially a live stream to kind of follow up on that video. If you haven't watched that video, I definitely want to encourage you to go watch that video. My goal is to address questions that people have after having watched that video, maybe things that I did not talk about or just questions that people have in general. I don't want to revisit everything that was talked about in that video. So I definitely want to encourage you, if you haven't seen it, to watch it. And if you have seen it, or if you haven't seen it, to respect that I may not be able to fully answer your question in this live stream, because that one over there is intended to be an enduring video, one that can be viewed by people to have an understanding of what that case is all about. And so hopefully folks will get that. So there have been a lot of people that have actually submitted questions over to me on the Instagram machine. I put up a post on Instagram basically saying, hey, if you've watched this video that was released earlier today, if you have outstanding questions regarding the case, please let me know. So some people have actually submitted those questions to me on Instagram, and I will attempt to bounce back and forth between what I see on Instagram and maybe what we see here in the room. But before I get started, I want to say hello to some comic book soldiers that have joined me here in the room. We're going to do just a couple of these. My man Rush Die Hard is here. Harvey Abel is here. Hawkeye Silver Age Surfer is good to see you, brother. Matt Woods is here. Tina is in the house, as is Randy Resnake. Scrolling down, Emerald Knight is in here. How you doing? Matt Woods is here. Scrolling. You guys were engaged in a good discussion. From heroes to icons, my man, how you doing, brother? It's definitely good to see you. Wes is in the house. All right, so that is all we're going to do right now. I'm going to do a couple of questions here. Gene, how you doing? We'll do Gene because he's like, hey, how you doing, Reggie? All right, so Sean, I see you, brother. So I'm gonna do a couple of questions here from the Instagram machine, and then I'm going to bounce back to the chat in a hot second. So let's see what they have. I'm trying. One of the questions here is, are you able to open/expose the sides of the new case? That is a question that has come in. And so let me make sure. Nope, that is not it. This one. This is the new case right here. And again, if you guys haven't seen the video that dropped, I definitely want to encourage you guys to check it out. This is the new case right here. Again, great copy of Amazing Fantasy 15. Grail comic there. Grail comic minus the facsimile there. All right. So the question here was, am I able to open up the sides? And the answer is no. The answer is no. I am not able to get my finger in either side of the case to be able to separate the front cover from the back. I will tell you, and you probably saw this if you watched the video, you can definitely feel the front and the back side of the case, right? Because it's almost like the front and the back case are a little high, and then there's a little valley in the middle of the front and the back case, so you can feel that side of the lip and you can feel this side of the lip. Hopefully that actually makes sense. So it's a little flat spot right in the middle of the case, but the edges, this edge and this edge, are both a little bit higher than the very middle. But I am not able to get my finger in there at all on any of the sides, except for, as I identify in the video, I think that there are air holes and or spots to crack the case down at the bottom. Outside of that, there is no wiggle room. There is no wiggle room to get a finger or anything else inside or in between the lids of the case. So there you go. That answers that one. Let me see. There's a question here. It says, do you feel like the change was to better serve the customer and put out a better product, or to decrease overhead by putting out a cheaper product? And so what I will say about that is that there is something called like cost of goods, right? Cost of goods sold, or COGS. Your cost of goods is always higher when you introduce something new. Even if it is cheaper, your cost of goods is always high. The only way that your cost of goods is actually low is if the product that you are producing is super cheap and or through volume. So the more units you sell, the lower your per unit cost actually is. And the point of that is that because of this case actually being heavier, so there's more material that is being used, it is more stable. It is also a new case. And because of the volume associated with CBCS versus other companies like CGC, for example, in terms of volume, my guess, my assumption is that this is not cheaper, right? Because again, it's new, their volume is lower, it's a brand new case. And my guess is that they also spent a lot of money and or time developing this new case, right? A lot of people would be surprised to know that years and years ago, when I did my MBA, I learned, and people may or may not know this, I don't know, it takes about 14 years and about $800 million in order to bring a new product to market. And not all products that go through that 14 years and $802 million are actually successful. But those that do succeed, that's a long period of time. That is a lot of money in order to bring that product to market. And then you have a small window of time in order to actually recover that $802 million for that product, as well as all the money you spent on all of the other products that never actually came to market. My point is, this was not cheap to make. That is my guess, is that this was not a cheap thing to actually do. Hopefully that answers that person's question. So I'm going to hold there. I'm going to bounce back to the chat and see whether there's questions. 14 years is a long time, brother. 14 years is a long time. So can you send in the old case for the new one? Is one of the questions I received. And again, if you guys have questions, if you throw it up in all caps, it actually helps me to identify questions for me versus you guys going back and forth. So if you can do that for me, that would actually help me. What I will tell you is that I don't know. Completely honest, bro. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be doing reholders. My guess is if they are smart, they will, right? Because people might want a new case. And so they may be doing reholders. When they're going to be offering the new case, I don't know. When it's going to be released, I don't know. I have zero information on availability of this piece. I literally, you guys saw me. I literally opened the box and started talking. That is the extent of my knowledge, is based upon what I observed in the 15 minutes or whatever that was that video. That is the extent of my understanding of this case, and it was all based upon my observations of the new case versus the old case. Okay, hopefully that helps. Let me scroll. I'm scrolling up for the moment. No Newton rings at CBCS. Yeah, and I don't think that CBCS has ever been known for Newton rings, but it's one of those things that people always raise when you start talking about graded comics. And so in the video, I actually put that in there for the purpose of underscoring the fact that that was not necessarily a concern here, because when one changes one's case, that might introduce new things that might have never been seen before. And so I wanted to acknowledge that right there. All right. So scrolling up, there looks like there may have been a question here. Scrolling through, yeah, I think I just answered that one. No, and I think no, there is no thing here. Does it stack? This is actually a good question, and someone else asked me that same question. I don't know who it was. They submitted that question, was whether it was stackable. I don't know, and I don't know because I have no tech specs on this case. I only have one case, so I cannot stack anything on it. My assumption is that it is stackable. That is my assumption. And part of the reason why I say that is because there is a beveled edge. There is a beveled edge around the entire ring of the comic. And so my guess is that the next comic kind of sits in the middle, because if you look at this bevel edge on the front, on the back, there is almost like a matching groove that goes around that appears to be smaller than the bevel on the front. So my guess is that the recess in the front is receptive of the blowout, if you will, or the lip that is on the back cover. So my assumption is that they are stackable. That is my assumption. And even if you try to stack it on the Olds one, it's pretty tough because they're not exactly the same size. So they just slide back and forth. Yeah, it's tough to tell. My guess again is that they did make this thing stackable, but I would need two of them to confirm that. All right. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here and see whether there's questions now. Does the inner well rattle? That's actually a good question. Let's check it out. Nope. There is literally no noise. There is literally no noise that comes off this book. And you kind of saw that in the video where I kind of twisted it and turned it and that kind of stuff and shook it just a little bit, not as violently as I just did there, but there is no noise that comes from this case. This case is pretty darn solid. It is pretty darn solid. So let's do one more question here, and then I'm going to bounce over to the Instagram machine. Scrolling through the comments, scrolling through the comments, seeing whether, okay, so wait a minute. Here's a question here. Did the case pick up a lot of smudges or fingerprints easily from handling it? I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, honestly, most of the time before I come in the comic room, I kind of wash my hands by and large, and my hands don't excrete a ton of oils and stuff like that. Never really have. It's tough for me to speak to that, right? I am looking at this case, and I've handled this case a fair bit, and I mean, I see some fingerprints, but is it a lot? I don't know. Just being honest. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have oils on your fingers and you're touching plastic or glass or even paper for that matter, you're going to leave deposits and residue behind. I mean, that's just kind of par for the course. But I don't know that it's obnoxious. I don't know that what I'm seeing here is an obnoxious number of fingerprints and smudges. So hopefully that helps. I mean, it's so much of this is just subjective. You know what I'm saying? It's so much of it is. So you got to bear with me. All right. So let me do, I'm going to go back to the Instagram machine, and then I will come back to the chat. And again, if you have questions about the case, if you throw it up in all caps, that will help me to be able to identify the questions that you guys have. So, let me see, scrolling through, someone asked if there is UV protection. I don't know. Again, I don't have any tech specs on the case at all. So I have no additional information other than what I'm able to actually observe here by looking at the case. And you cannot tell whether something has UV protection from observation. My assumption is that there is no UV protection. That's my assumption. I don't know if I don't know. I don't know. My guess is that it does not. But whenever they actually unveil these things, maybe they will actually to put out some of that information to let us know. There's a question here: if the label is different, if so, how? I'm gonna not answer that question. I would encourage the person to watch the video because I actually speak to that in detail. There's a question here around UV protection, waterproof. I don't know if any cases is ever going to be waterproof because most cases are designed to actually be breathable to release the gases that come off the paper. So I don't think waterproof is going to ever be an option. UV protection, we've spoken to that. I don't know whether they're going to have new labels. I kind of spoke to that in the video. Custom labels, I have no clue. There's a question here around whether it's the same size as a CGC case. And I actually addressed that in, not the video itself, but in the comments while we were doing the premiere. And what I will tell you is that the new case is a hair larger than it is a hair larger, taller than the CGC case. And if you watch the video, you could see the difference in the size between the old CBCS case and the new CBCS case. And I will tell you that the difference between the olds versus the new is about the same as the new CBCS case from the CGC case in terms of height. It is slightly shorter, but it is also wider. The CBCS cases are basically the exact same width, but the CGC case is definitely more narrow than the new CBCS case. And again, I don't know if you guys will actually be able to see any of that. But yeah, you probably cannot see that here on camera, but I will try. So in the front, you have, it's going to be tough. Oh, there we go. We might be able to see it that way. So right here is the old CBCS, new, and then CGC. And make sure that that's right. Yep, that is right. It is a hair's difference. They step down just ever so slightly as you go from one to the other. And again, the width is a little thicker, a little wider than CGC. So hopefully that answers that question. So scrolling through the comments you're seeing. Okay, so we're going to go back to the chat here and see what questions you guys have. You know, everybody asks for UV protection, but I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if it would be a game changer. I struggle with that. I struggle with that, to be honest with you, because the thing is that you should never put a comic in the sun, right? You should never put a comic in the sun, right? We know that that's going to be detrimental. There is a reason why museums, if you will, are not necessarily lit with sunlight. You know what I'm saying? In the most part. So I don't know if having UV protection actually in a comic case is going to be a good thing versus be a liability for the third-party grading companies, right? Because the issue is that let me not even go there. It could be a liability. It could be a liability in some way. So I don't know if anyone's actually going to go that way. What is this? Matt, Regie is good at honoring the AOKs with these visual shout outs. I'm not sure what that was about. I don't know what that was about. I did hear that the new case does not have UV protection. Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. Scrolling down through the comments here. Let me see what else the questions are. There you go. All archival. Yeah, there are definitely some additional bags that you can get. I saw one once upon a time that was like copper colored. You can actually get that and you can put your comic in that. And then that offers some kind of UV protection, but I don't know how aesthetic a comic, graded comic is in a bag for like the purpose of display. You know what I'm saying? It's just, I don't know. Scrolling through the comments here, MRE's in the house. MRE's in the house. So let me scroll up through the comments again. So this is a good question. So Sith Lord is saying, will you consider submitting books to CBCS because of their new case? The answer is no. The answer is no. I don't get a comic graded because of a case or a label. That to me is not really a motivating factor, right? Never has been, right? I have no problem with the CBCS label. I have no problem with the CBCS case. I think the case is actually really nice, but neither one of those things motivate me to send books to CBCS, right? When I sat down years ago and I drew that line in the sheet of the paper and I put CBCS on one side and CGC on the other side and kind of went through which grading company I want to go with, I made a decision to go with one, and I don't regret that decision, right? I don't regret that decision, and I don't see me changing that decision because someone else has a new case or even a new label or even had UV protection. Those to me are not necessarily motivating factors. But I'm also the same guy that has purchased the exact same pair, not exact same pair, but the exact brand of shoe for the last 12 years, dress shoe, right? There's a certain shoe that I buy, and that is the only dress shoe that I wear, right? I mean, I buy a certain type of car, and I only buy that certain type of car. When I land on something that I really like, I tend to stick with that thing long term and don't necessarily deviate from that unless there's a substantial reason why I should deviate. One sec. So, it's for me, it's not necessarily a motivator to move over. I think that they did a fantastic job with revising the case and narrowing, if you will, the playing field between them and CGC, because there are people that have an issue with their case and historically have. And so I think that it's a very good move on their part to actually make that investment, to step their game up, to be more competitive. And I applaud them for that. I think that that is a fantastic move on their part. I am a big fan of competition. And so I think that CBCS being a stronger competitor will make CGC better and will provide us with more options and hopefully just more ways to actually get comics graded if that's what we want to do, right? I think that that healthy competition is a good thing, and by stepping up their game with the case, it better positions them to be able to do some of that stuff. All right. So scrolling through some of the comments here, seeing what else you guys are talking about. That is one. So I have a couple of catchphrases. One of them is I struggle with that, and another is in my head. In my head, this makes sense, but you guys have to tell me whether this makes sense when I say it out loud and you actually hear it. Scrolling through the comments here, seeing else what you guys are talking about. Scrolling. All right. So Emerald Knight says, I hope CGC corrects the rattle. Have I experienced that? I don't know. I don't know that I have. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I'm pretty low maintenance with most stuff, to be honest with you. A lot of people, I think that a lot of people are bothered by things that don't bother me, and there's things that bother me that don't necessarily bother other people, so I haven't necessarily noticed a rattle. The label of CBCS is plain, but that doesn't bother me because it actually puts more focus on the comic. It's just like, I don't know. I don't worry about a lot of this stuff. So there you go. And at the end of the day, to me, if we can draw a line on a sheet of paper and start writing out the pros and cons of two companies, that to me is actually a good sign. The fact that you actually have options, you have things that you have to write out to be able to clarify what makes sense for you, means that you have two worthy competitors, right? Two competitors worthy of comparison. That is actually a good thing. The fact that you and I have different, we landed in different places, I think that's actually a good thing. You know what I'm saying? I think it's a good thing. If you're happy with CBCS, I'm happy with CGC. I think that's cool, right? And we can still just love comics for what they are, right? And it's like, at the end of the day, man, that's kind of what matters to me. There are people out there that love PGX. hey, more no, I have no problem with that. People like EGS, people like Halo, I have no problem with any of that stuff. You know, if it is your collection, it is your money, you spend it the way that you want and in a way that actually makes sense for you and your collection. And if that brings you happiness, then it works. You know what I'm saying? So salute to you, brother. And I think that's one of the cool things about this is that CBCS actually reached out to me to ask me to look at this, even though they kind of sort of know that I like CGC, right? As evidenced by all the books that I have here. But I think they also recognize that I'm also dependent upon the situation, critical of CGC. Like I've done videos on them doing money grabs and all this other kind of stuff because it is what it is. It is what it is. I call it the way that I see it, you know? Scrolling. Competition is good. What's the next game changer? I mean, I think that's the question. Right. I think that's the question is what is the next game changer, right? Is it a case that is mountable to the wall? Is it one that has a kickstand for the purpose of display? I don't know if that's even attractive to people, right? You know, I think that, you know, I worry to some degree or another that things will get even a little more gimmicky than they already are, right? And I say that because I am not a fan of the CGC labels that they do. I think that they're nice. I think that the CGC labels that they put out there for like $5 are really cool. And if people want to spend their money on that is cool. But to some degree or another, if I start to see a price difference between one book that has a Spider-Man label and one that does not, that's when it starts to spill over to the detriment, in my opinion, you know, and I did a video on that many months ago about that very thing. But it's like, if people want to spend an extra couple of bucks to get a dressed up label, hey, go for it. But I don't want us to get to the point where we are paying for the gimmick instead of the book itself, you know? And so that is my hope, is that we don't go that far, you know? Let me see. I buy CGC. If I submit books myself, I go with CBCS. Scrolling down, see what else you guys are talking about. Here's a question here. If CBCS said they give you an Amazing Fantasy 15 4.0 for free in exchange for you changing all of your CGC books to their new case for free, would you? So I struggle with them being willing to give me what is that, a $50,000 book? I don't even know if they would actually do that, you know. And so here's the thing: who says no to an Amazing Fantasy 4.0, right? Like who says no to that? But I don't even think that that's a realistic thing, because one, they would not do that because buying things only gets you so far. And I mean, let's be honest, it would potentially undermine my credibility, right? If I were to accept that. But it's also something, how do you say no to an Amazing Fantasy book of that great? That's a really tough one. Thankfully, we will never have to face that question, and it's only a hypothetical thing. You know what I'm saying? Scrolling down to some of the comments here. Let me see. So, no, it wasn't. My first few were not. My very first case that I ever bought was a CGC book. I don't remember which one it was, but it was not a CBCS book. There were a couple of CBCS books that I purchased early on in the process, but not my first. And it was still when I was, deciding which company I wanted to go with. So I was kind of sort of buying both whenever I saw them. I mean, I even bought a CBCS book this year. Honestly, I bought one this year because I think it was the first appearance of Omega Red. It was like $120, I think, with CGC, and the exact same book was like 90 something with CBCS. I bought the less expensive book. And did not look back. Scrolling. Let me see what else you guys are talking about. What is this? Think EGS has the right idea with cases that you can access the book and with UV protection. Yeah, I mean, again, there are people that don't necessarily like that. And again, I think that that's part of the reason why I helped to launch EGS when they came out. It's like 2 years ago now, over a year ago. I think that there is no perfect solution for everybody. And if all of these companies are trying to be competitive and trying to carve out a space for themselves with different offerings, then I think that in the end, we as collectors benefit because we have options, we have choices, we have different ways and approaches to how we can get our books graded if that's what we want to do, right? Because there's a whole group where you don't have to do anything. You do not have to get anything graded if that's not what you want. But if you do, you have options. You can do raw grading with CBCS or with EGS. You can do graded with any of the three or PGX for that matter. You have options. You can do the fancy, sexy labels that EGS does. Or you can get the dressed up labels that you get from CGC, or you can get a plain label. I mean, you have options. And I think what's great is that there are different price points and different offerings for the different types of collectors that are out there. And I think that that is fantastic. So, scrolling up through the comments here. Yeah, so Silver Age Surfer's making a point here. It says light happens from different sources. Instead of having to put UV protection film on the windows or over light lenses or use certain bulbs, it would be nice for us to. Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. So I have it on my lights. I have it on my window. Even if I had it on my case, I would still have it on my lights and I would still have it on my windows, right? Because more protection is always better than less protection. So I don't know that if this book right here was perfectly protected, what about all of the ungraded books that are actually in this room, right? And it's like, again, if the case had UV protection, I don't know if that would be the magical solve for everything. I think it is a nice feature, but I don't know if it's a perfect solve for everything, you know? And again, not every comic in the collection. I mean, honestly, the vast majority of the collection is raw. And so having UV protection on this one thing doesn't necessarily help me. So, TJ Watson, how you doing, brother? It is good to see you, my friend. Yes, it is. It is great for business. I think it is also good for collectors as well. I think that we benefit from that. You know, and so that again, that's why I'm a good fan of that. So Berg family, welcome, brother. It's good to see you. He dropped it was a list of his must reads or his picks or something like that. This was dropped on YouTube. At least I saw it just a short while ago, but he says he just finished the review of the new case. Really, really good, thorough review. You are very welcome, my friend. Thank you for taking the time to watch that one. Can somebody school me real quick on the UV protected light bulb? So I'm not sure that I'm getting that question correctly, but what I will tell you is if you watch some of my videos on the channel where I talk about UV protection, I literally show you how I go about doing UV protection for the studio lights. I have one light in front of me, one off to the side, and one behind me. All of those have UV protection. They're LED panels, and I use UV protection over them. I have two lights overhead that also have UV film placed over them to minimize the UV that comes off of the LED lights. There was a belief that there was no UV that came off LED, and now they are revealing that there is a small amount of UV that comes off of them. So I have the protection of blacking out the window, so there is no light that comes in here. But when the studio lights are on, I also want to have that protection as well. So that's how we kind of reduce it here in the room. Hopefully that answers your question. Scrolling, no sunlight in the back. Let me see. CBCS now has a census report. Yes, indeed, they do. Chris Bigger, how you doing, brother? It's good to see you. And again, if you guys have questions, throw it up in all caps. How does the grading of CBCS match up with CGC? Does CBCS grade harder, easier? I honestly cannot answer that question. I am unable to answer that question. And I think honestly that anybody that tries to do so is giving you an anecdotal answer at best. Because without, in my opinion, doing a sizable comparison between the grading companies, it is all anecdotal evidence. It is opinion. It is based upon observations, you would have to do a sizable study in my mind to be able to definitively say that one is better than the other, one is stricter than the other, one is more lenient than the other. Yeah, I don't think that you can actually answer that question. I really don't. And so that is part of the reason why I say that so much about landing on a grading company is about personal preference. It is about determining for, let me take that comment down. It's about determining for one's self, which services, which features are most meaningful to you, and then going with the grading company that best meets those wants, needs, and desires, you know, and until you sit down and do your own analysis and ask yourself, what do I need from a third party grading company? It's pretty tough to know which one you want to go with. And so, you know, people are like, you know, do you not like CBCS? And the answer is, I have nothing against CBCS. I've never actually used CBCS, never. So that's part of the reason why I don't compare the two, because I have zero experience with CBCS. I've bought some of their books, but I've literally never sent a comic in to be graded by them. I've never sent one to PGX either. And so that's why I try to stay away from doing those type of comparisons, because I don't have that experience, you know. So hopefully that helps answer some of those questions about that. Let me scroll down through the comments here. I'm scrolling down to the bottom. There's a question here. Doc says, Reggie, why do CGC comics traditionally sell for more than CBCS? So, you know, again, even in this situation, I think that you have to do some analysis to really be able to determine definitively, do they actually sell for more? And I've never done that comparison, to be honest with you, right? I've never actually attempted to look at two books from CGC and one from CBCS that were sold at the same grade, at the same, roughly the same time, in a large enough sample in order to definitively say that one sells for more, because that's technically what you need to do, right? Because let's say that a Miles Morales CGC sold today, and a Miles Morales CBCS sold a month ago, people would say that CGC actually sells for more. It's the same books, a 9.8, both cases, right? Well, because of the time difference, that's not actually a fair comparison to make, because look at how much has changed in a month. So to do it the right way, you would basically have to look at sales at the same grade sold in tight proximity, and you would have to have a large sample in order to say definitively that CGC sells for more or CBCS sells for less. You would have to do that. I've never seen that study. What I've seen is anecdotal evidence be passed off as fact. Now, what I will say is that there is somebody that has pointed out to me that they believe, based upon their observations and them pulling data themselves, that CGC sells for roughly 5 to 10% more. I have not seen the data. I have not done the analysis. I do trust this person because this person is actually in the industry and has that I have confidence in them that they represented the data well. So their observation is 5 to 10% more. And I would tell you that some people probably perceive the difference to be much greater, but that's my point, is that when you actually look at the data, 5% is actually not a whole lot of money. It's actually not a whole lot of money. So scrolling down through the comments here, seeing what else you guys are talking about. There you go. There you go. You have to crunch the numbers. You know what I'm saying? You have to crunch the numbers, because anything else is like opinion, and an opinion should not be passed off as fact. Personal preference should not be passed off as fact, you know? Shout out to Sith Lord, man. I definitely appreciate that. Like the X-Men 4, man, come on, brother. Come on, brother. We had to represent back there with all that X-Men goodness off to the side. I need a couple of more of those low number X-Men books back there to fill up that wall, man. At some point I may start to go after some X-Men books. We will see. Maybe not all of them, maybe not a full run, but there's a couple of low number X-Men books that I definitely dig. I'll have to probably fight Lee Akins for them, because that dude is on a tear. He is on a tear over there. But I definitely appreciate that, brother. Scrolling down through Scrolling down to the chat, you are a nut. Let me see. I'm gonna go up this time because we reached the bottom. RC Cola, Pepsi, Coke. I see a whole bunch of conversations going on in here. What is this? On eBay, the same book is usually 100 higher for CGC. I, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I really don't. Again, prices on eBay are not necessarily always reflective of the reality that is seen in places elsewhere, right? What happens on there is a reason why I recommend that people get pricing guides. There is a reason why I say people should, if you are buying and selling comics, you should have a pricing service. And it doesn't matter whether it's a free one or it's a one that is paid for. I think that you should have a pricing service because any good pricing service actually aggregates data. They pull data in, not just from eBay, but from reputable dealers. They pull them in from auction houses. They pull them on from other online marketplaces. They aggregate the data, they scrub the data, they throw out abnormal data that looks irregular, and then they provide you with the actual synthesis of that information, right? They give you the FMV in some cases. They give you the actual sales of the comic. And you can actually go in and look at the sales of the comic to see what was the actual book that was sold. What was the condition of the book? What was the grade of the book? Was it a fixed auction? Was it a set price? What was it? Because all of that information, I think, is relevant for people to be able to decide what is actually a fair price for a comic. If you are just looking at eBay, you are looking at a small segment of the overall comic book market. We have the ability, unlike decades ago, where we actually have the data. You know, we have the data, and I can tell you that eBay is not the market. eBay is not the market. And so I would encourage people to look at pricing guides and to really to make use of the data that is really at our fingertips, you know, and to make some decisions based upon some of that stuff. So scrolling down through the comments here, seeing what else you guys are talking about. Okay, I went to the bottom already. We're going to go back up and see whether there's anything in the top part that I may have missed. Scrolling through. There you go. That is true. I did notice that CGC book sale for more. Scrolling through the comments here, I think we have addressed all of those. Okay, so I'm gonna scroll back down to the bottom. I will buy a PGX book off of eBay, get deals on them sometimes. I know a lot of people that do that, man, that will hunt for the PGX books, will get those books, and then will crack them and send them in to another grading company. I know a lot of people that actually do that. I thought about it a couple of years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. I was looking at doing it, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't pull the trigger. I couldn't pull the trigger on that one. I had to let that one go. There are some things that I watch it sail by. Oh man, if you can get a deal, man, what is this? eBay prices. eBay is 75% red ocean. Man, if you want to have somebody sell you the future value of a comic, you go to eBay. No. I mean, eBay sellers, there are some good eBay sellers. There are some that I buy from repeatedly. Right. And then there are some that will try to sell the future value of the comic. Like if the comic is worth $100 today, they have it for, you know, 120, 130 plus shipping. And they do that because it only takes one person. If one person buys it, they make their money, right? But part of it, what they're doing is they're hedging their bet that they put this up there. They don't have to watch it all the time because they know if somebody buys it, there's that cushion in there between potentially the value of the book and what they're trying to get it for. And it's a game, you know. And I try to buy from some of the same sellers, if I can, if their books are priced appropriately. because not all of them are. I mean, there are some people that I buy from on a regular basis, and I literally will have two windows open. I will have a price guide open, and I will have the eBay or the website that I'm buying from open. I will look at the book, I will look at the FMV, I will look at the sales, and then I will decide, do I want to buy this book at this price based upon the sales data and the asking price? And if I see a difference, if it's below, a lot of times I pull the trigger. If there's a difference where the seller is a little bit higher, I will send them a message and be like, hey, I'm willing to pay this based upon what I'm actually seeing in this pricing guide. And a lot of times they actually accept. A lot of times they actually accept those offers, because it's not like, hey, I want this book for cheap. I want this book at a price that is based upon the data. And if you can meet me at the data, then I can get on board with the sale, right? And that's how I balance things. And I oftentimes, again, you'll see me out. If you ever have me buy your stuff, there will be, hey, this is the price that I'm willing to pay based upon the data that I see in the system. If you're willing to accept it, we can make magic happen. And then I sign my name. So I think I'm kind of out of the questions over here for the most part. On the Instagram machine, there's a couple of comments about the label and things like that. People still think that the label is bland. I cannot disagree with that. I don't know that I necessarily have a problem with it, but I can get where people are coming from with that. So scrolling through the comments. Question, did CBCS tell you when they will be selling the new cases? They did not. D-Ron, they did not. I have no additional insight into when the cases will be available, whether you can do any reholders for old cases to new cases. I have no insight. In fact, the actually sent a link from my video to the VP of operations, and basically was like, hey, the video's up, you can go check it out, it's out there for people to watch. And I did not ask any questions about availability. Maybe I will and try to bring that information to you guys. So let me see what I can do about that one. So scrolling through the comments again, I'm looking for caps, because that actually helps me to be able to see what you guys are doing. What is this? My CBCS 9.6 came back CGC 9.2. What is this? Regie, does a key comic with a boring story within ever shy you away from purchasing it? Not really. I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, if it's a book that I really want, and I want that book for some reason or another, the story inside doesn't necessarily deter me. Like, I'm gonna be honest. So, Amazing Spider-Man number 129, the Jackal and Punisher. If you've ever read that story, it's not exactly a great story. X-Men number 1, not exactly a good story. X-Men 12, which are books that are behind me on the wall, not exactly good stories, right? I mean, but these are still books that you want to buy and have them in your collection, even though they're not necessarily great stories, because you're getting them to some degree or another because of what the book represents. The historical significance of that book outweighs the story that is contained within. Now, I will tell you, if I'm gonna spend a lot of money on a book, I'm going to read that book. All right, I am going to read it by hook or crook, whether it is good or bad. I'm going to read it because I spent my money on it, right? So, but I don't know that it will deter me from not buying it. The same way, if there's a cover of a comic that I don't necessarily like, if I'm buying that book for a reason, then I don't know even an ugly cover is a deterrent. Like, there's a lot of low number Amazing Spider-Man books that are not necessarily attractive. Like I think it's like 30 and 31, 29, 30, 31, not great covers. But if you are working on a run of low digit Amazing Spider-Man, you kind of buy those books. So I think that's actually a legit question. That's actually a legit question. Scrolling down through the comments, somebody talking about Phoebe, me making magic happen, because that's what I do. I would think that people will be interested in this one, Joel. I think that people will be interested in the reholder. I think people, I'm going to be honest, again, the new case is pretty darn nice. The new case from CBCS is pretty nice. There is no doubt about that. And I can see people that have had an issue with the old generations of the cases wanting to do the reholder. And I don't begrudge you at all for making that call, because this is actually a nice case, right? There's no doubt about that one. So hopefully they start to reveal some of these details as to when these things are going to be available. My guess is that they don't have that fully baked. because you would think that if they did, they would have maybe shared that with me so that I could have spoken to some of those points. But my guess is maybe they're still working out some of the details, right? My guess is that they're close, but not necessarily ready to reveal some of those details publicly. So my guess is that to turn these things around and to put them into place is not necessarily an easy feat, right? There's some work, there's some organizational change that has to occur to swap out these cases and to handle the them coming back and being reholdered and changing the websites and all that other stuff in the middle of the Voldemort, not necessarily an easy undertaking. So scrolling through, see what you guys are talking about. Scrolling. Oh, I lost part of the comment here. You are hilarious. Scrolling down to some of the comments. Regie, did you find any other critique on the CBS case that you didn't mention by chance? No, I mean, again, it's a pretty solid case, right? The thing has no flex to it. I think that that it's not maybe as polished and refined as one would like. Like the edges of it are a little rough as you run your finger around. It's not necessarily a smooth surface all the way around. You can feel that front and back lip. Neither good nor bad, but these are some of the tactile observations that I actually have about the case. There is no flex, which I think is great. Yeah, I mean, it's a case. It securely holds the comic. It doesn't rattle. It doesn't bend. It doesn't bow. I mean, I could probably drop it and see how it handles that. But by and large, this thing seems to do what it is that we want it to do, which is to protect the comic and preserve the comic. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that it is doing the job, and as I was trying to play around with it before, trying to see if I could shake it, thing doesn't even shake. So I have no additional critiques of this case. It is honestly a straightforward review of this case. One of the things that I still would love to know is whether that label is one solid piece, and I honestly don't know whether the front is whether the front and the top are one piece of paper. What I will tell you is that the edge of this is still perforated. You can actually see the perforation when they separated. I'm guessing it came in a big sheet or something like that, and they kind of broke it apart. So there's no laser or die cuts on this thing. It is actually a perforation that is, I don't know, maybe separated by hand. I'm honestly not certain. And I know that is something that people did not necessarily like about the old labels. That seems to be holding true here. For the other is that for the new is that there is still that perforation. The other thing that people have asked about is the thickness of this. And I will tell you that in the old case, that strip at the top, I think is a piece of paper. And I think over time it might shift and warp and bend and twist, which makes it really hard to actually see it and read it. I think that this one might be one sheet and therefore is a little more sturdy and durable than the old one. But without cracking it or having someone tell me that it's one piece and heavier cardstock, I have no clue. I have no clue whether that is true. So hopefully, Sully Two Kings, that actually answers your questions, brother. Does it scratch easily? I don't know. I didn't try to scratch it. I've never purposefully tried to scratch a case. I don't even know how to test the resistance or the scratch resistance of the case. I would have no way of doing that in a manner in which to really explain to you guys how easy or hard it is to actually scratch the case. I mean, running a fingernail across it doesn't necessarily do it. So I would have to have some other means to test it. And I don't really have a way to do it. Drop it like it's hot. You're a nut. All right, let me see. Scrolling down through some of the comments here. We'll see what else you guys are talking about. Again, if it's on all caps, it actually definitely helps me to actually be able to see it. What is this? Sorry, off topic. What's with the MREs? So, comic book soldiers always need to have MREs. My man, Master Blaster, hooked me up as a really fantastic A-OK with the MREs back there. I'm a huge fan of military related things, right? The wife even got me a green army green watch because I like military inspired stuff. So there's a couple of actual soldiers, not swoldiers. Well, I guess they are soldiers that send me military related things from time to time. And one of the most recent was the MREs. And so they are back there in a place of honor on full display. And in case there are rumors that they may have some rolling blackouts here in Northern California. So if that does happen, we have a couple of meals. I think it's meal number 15 and meal number 9 that are back there. We have at least 2 meals that the family can consume if we lose power. There you go. Stand up and salute. No, Reggie is never going into the grading business. You guys are too picky for me. I will never go into the grading business. There you go, man. Brother, I went downstairs to my Stairmaster. This was probably a month ago. And one of the kids had scratched up the face to my Stairmaster. And I was so angry because this Stairmaster has been to Connecticut. It has been it came all the way from Connecticut here to California, and it is in pristine shape. And now it has a scratch display. You know what I'm saying? So my kids are animals. What if you could add your own collection pedigree to your stand up? Sign me up for that, brother. If I looked into getting the pedigree. I looked into it. Unfortunately, I do not qualify for a pedigree, but maybe I'll just call it a pedigree. Stay tuned for the video. Scrolling down through some of the comments here. Thanks to all the soldiers out there. Stand up, Joel. I see you, brother. That is what's up. What was it, Green Lantern? If this were Thanatos, aka Matt, it would indeed be a Green Lantern themed watch. Instead, this is a military themed watch that I'm rocking right there. So, what is this, Regie? Can you do as good as PGX? Chris, I'm gonna have to stop reading your comments, brother. Whitewell Comics in the house. How you doing, brother? It's good to see you. So Whitewell, brother, what's up with all the posts that you're doing on the Instagram machine where you say stay tuned? There's a lot of comic book drawing, a lot of sketches, color tests, and the like on the Instagram machine. Very perplexed by all this. I don't know if I should get excited or get angry because you keep teasing me with these different posts that you keep putting up. That's all I'm saying. Whitewell, I'm starting to look at you, brother. I'm starting to look at you. I started to send you a message yesterday, and I was like, "Nah, I'm just wait. I'ma just wait." MRE, meals ready to eat. I'ma just wait. No. So the thing about the pedigree is that, like, there's certain criteria. It has to be, I think, like original owner. Vast majority of the books have to be picked up like off the rack. You can't necessarily build the collection through acquisition and purchase. It has to be mostly original owner. There's a couple of other criteria, but as I was reading the criteria, I was like, I'm out. I'm out. I'm done. I can't even qualify, so I'm out. I'm out of this one. So scrolling down to the comments here again for you guys, seeing what else you guys are talking about. All right. So I am comics ready to read. That's what I like that one. CRR, I like that one. Comics ready to read. I may have to steal that. Throw that on a shirt. Scrolling through the comments here. All right, so I think I am going to wrap this thing up, man. I've been going for 57 minutes. As you guys probably heard, Rush Die Hard. My children have stopped screaming, which means that they are probably in their bed by this point because it is a little bit definitely after their bedtime. But I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me just a little bit. Thank you for all the questions that you submitted regarding the CBCS case. What I will say to you is that I think that the offering from CBCS is a solid one. I personally do not make my decisions on which grading company to go with based upon the case. For me, it is more about the overall offering. There is no one variable, if you will, that outweighs everything. So my point here is that if you are considering going with a grading company, you should look at all of the grading companies, look at the service offerings, do a pro-con list. ask yourself what is actually important to you from a third-party grading company, because it could be a combination of turnaround time and services offered and the ability to get a book clean, pressed, and also graded. It could be cost. It could be signature verification. It could be raw book pricing. My point is that the grading company decision, I think, is a little bigger than who has the best case or who has the prettiest label. I think that it's bigger than that. At least, again, in my mind, these are my opinions. What I would encourage you to do is to give thought to what it is that you want for your collection, and to make an informed decision based upon your evaluation of the offerings from the different companies that are out there. The video that was released today was intended to provide you with some additional information, some things for you to consider about this case. It was not designed to tell you what to do. It was designed for you to take it and plug it into your equation to decide what makes sense for you. So hopefully you guys get that. Hopefully you get where I'm coming from. The case is solid. Case is not perfect. No case is perfect. No company is perfect. Decide what makes sense for you. All right. With that said, I'm going to wrap this thing up. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me. If you enjoyed this video, I want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment behind so we can continue to mix it up in the comment section. If you haven't yet watched the video that I released earlier today, the actual review of the case, I definitely want to encourage you guys to go check it out. There is a lot more detail in that actual video, and I definitely want you guys to stay tuned. There are more videos that are going to be coming out this week, Monday through Thursday, well, I guess now Tuesday through Thursday at 3:30 p.m. If you have not listened to the podcast dropped earlier today. And if you're into podcasts, it is available wherever you listen to podcasts. I do believe that I am there. If you need to reach out to me, you can do it on Instagram at Regie Collects. And if you need to send me an email, you can do that as well at Regie@regiecollects.com. Take care.